Welcome to our 53rd podcast. Today we'll be talking about gamification and driving change. What's the one thing you can do now to keep your team engaged and motivated by making a game of change when appropriate? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. As always, we're so glad to have you here with us today. I'm Rich Cruz. I'm an organizational development consultant, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Ben Kleinman. Hey, Ben.
Hey, everyone.
And Ben, as a change expert, we thought we would talk about gamification today, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's another one of those great tools that you can have in your tool belt to help with making change a little bit easier or maybe a little bit more fun. We were just talking about putting the fun back into change in our last episode. So maybe we do a little bit of a deeper dive in gamification there in ways that it can be helpful and productive and make change a little bit more fun, but also help you get to where you need to be in a way that's not just making it really painful for everyone.
That's right. Yeah. Nobody likes pain, but we can. But unless you are in like Squid Game, people like games,
Right.
right? I mean, this is we grew up with, and it makes sense to tap into, that play aspect of things.
Yeah, for sure. There's a game or element or a fun element of it. And so maybe what we do is let's start with just this sort of definition to ground
Yep.
everyone in terms of what we're talking about when we're talking about gamification and how to use that in change management. And then just go from there, give some examples and share some
For sure.
experiences. And to your point, Rich, in the lead into this episode, I think it's important for us to talk about when it's maybe not the best idea to consider
Yeah.
using gamification in a change initiative.
Yep.
Sound good?
Yep. Awesome. So sounds great to me, man.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome.
So defining terms, I know we're all about defining terms, acronyms, all sorts of methodologies and whatnot. So just to dig in, one of the ways that I like to think about gamification is using these elements of games and game designs. And so a lot of that is you think about getting points or badges or having leaderboards, some kind of healthy competition, and bringing that into a non-game scenario. So you don't typically, I'm sorry, stepping back. Nowadays, it's a lot more common to see this in a workplace environment. Years ago, it was pretty rare to see the things like a leaderboard, unless you were in sales, maybe outside of sales, you wouldn't really see these sort of where are people ranked with relative to each other in terms of coming up to speed on a new process or getting
Sure.
up to speed on some of their training materials or building out some slides for a deck or something like a big presentation or that kind of thing. It was
Yeah.
like you were doing your own thing and somebody magically brought it all together. And so in
Right.
this sense, we're looking at ways to sort of bring some of those healthy game design elements into a change concept.
Yep.
So that's like super, super basic definition. Is that tracking, Rich, with kind of where?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, and research, supports this, so, one of the definitions from an article, um, says that gamification is the process of enhancing a service with motivational affordances for gameful experiences in order to support the user's overall value creation. In other words, like you're putting them into a situation where you're increasing their value that they have for what you're doing, right? And that's that, so that the user or the in this case, the employee, right, is motivated to, keep going and
Mhm.
keep going at something, right? Uh,
It's a good way to boost motivation, and I think that's probably the first time I've ever heard of the term motivational affordances.
affordance. Yeah.
That
Right.
that
Yeah.
could be our
There's
that
the
could be our Yahtzee
academic
word of the day right there.
for sure. Well, I, you know, when I think of change, oftentimes, sometimes we think about this in business contexts, right? But even personal contexts of uh, health and fitness, right?
Yeah.
We A lot of the apps these days have this gamification that happens, right? Where, for instance, I've been doing. If you're familiar with Diamond Dallas Page, the WWE wrestler from,
Gotta talk to
if you guys
Alex
know,
Russ's about
no,
that. She was all
sure.
about WWE,
That's right.
but
Yeah, that's right.
I've it's been many years. This was going back to pre-WWF, so it's been a while.
Right, right. Yes, he was. I think he was around when it was WW. Well, he has this program called DDP Yoga. So it blends yoga. Yes, it's weird. So,
A little bit
but I've been
yoga, a
doing this
little
thing
bit
since like.
headlock, you know,
That's right. That's right. And he has the diamond cutter. All right. That was his move.
the diamond cutter.
And
And how okay, this is totally off topic, but how did
yeah,
he apply the diamond cutter to get one of his opponents to submit?
it was, I cannot explain. I've seen the diamond cutter like dozens of times,
Okay.
and I cannot explain to
It's just
exactly
go
how
YouTube
it
it. Okay.
works.
All right.
Yes.
I'm sorry
Right.
for the
But it
distraction.
starts with this,
All right.
right? Um, and but he's got this app, all right? And I've been doing this since like 2015. So you're competing against yourself, right? So you take before photos, and then you're looking at
Mhm,
after photos, measurements, those
mhm.
types of things. There's a leaderboard for points, so you're getting points. If you take their video courses, right, you get additional points. There's like a wheel that you can spin to get additional points. And as you get more points, you can earn things like t-shirts and stuff like that, right? So
Okay.
it's just, in my opinion, superbly done, right?
In
Um
a way that's gamification for you to get you to be healthier and a
yeah,
profit maker for them.
that's right.
That's really
Yeah.
smart.
They're keeping me stuck with them for how many years,
And how much
right?
Diamond what was his name?
Diamond Dallas Page.
How
Yep,
much Diamond
DDP.
Dallas Page swag have you earned?
I have earned 2 T-shirts and a customized video from him. Ooh, yes, I do have a video from him. It was really cool. Yeah,
That's cool.
it's really cool.
You must have been gunning for those workouts.
I was going at it, and I'm still like, I'm trying. They raised the ante from 500,000 points to now 1,000,000 points to get the video, and I'm like, I'm coming for you, man. I'm at like 250,000 again. So, but and it keeps you motivated, right? Um,
Okay.
if we
DDP,
fast forward,
if you're watching this, if you're listening to this DDP, we need you to come do a DDP, make change your friend.
oh man, yeah, oh, he's all about change, right? I mean, that's
That's
really
his jam,
what
right?
that's his thing. And he was actually on Shark Tank for he was he was on Shark Tank, and they turned it down, right? They turned him down,
Really? You know
and it
why?
was the best thing for him because that motivated him to compete against himself and say, "You know what? We don't need them. We're just gonna go
Yeah.
for it."
Do you know
Right?
what was there just something about his business model that wasn't attractive to the investors?
Yeah, it was another, to them, it was another workout
I
program.
see. They didn't quite understand the attraction of him as a unique celebrity.
Right,
Got it.
right.
Okay.
But in this case, it's different because it does have this motivating factor, not to mention the star power
The
and all
star
that other
power, yeah,
stuff.
it's
Yeah.
a lot like I couldn't pull that off. Nobody needs a little Benny t-shirt or whatever.
Little Penny, you can do it.
One of those little, like, pipsqueak muscles from the Popeye cartoons, where it's like this sad little
Nice.
kid doing the bicep curls before he has his Popeye-infused canned spinach. This is really fun. It's a nice
Yeah,
kind of, discussion, but it makes me think of how that can and cannot resonate in a work environment, in the sense
sure.
that in a work environment, can you compete against yourself? Is that healthy? Is that productive? Is that,
Mhm.
too self-motivated? Can a employer or your team leader gain, I don't know, gain efficiencies or help make the team more cohesive if people are competing against themselves? Is there
Yeah,
something about star power at work where if you have a really, really motivational leader that everyone at the company loves, is that a way to sort of take advantage of that person's celebrity and boost gamification, or is that just not a thing we would want to try to do within the context of gamification?
yeah, are you trying to lay out a whole season of episodes right now? Like like, that is
I know that's a
a
lot, but
bunch of
it's
questions
like
there.
Ted Lasso had how many seasons, right? So
Right, there you go.
White Lotus is
Perfect,
on season 3. We can do it.
perfect. Well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and when we get back, let's talk about putting this in the context of, organizational change.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I like that.
we'll be right back.
Dysfunctional organizational cultures and poorly managed transformations can devastate employee morale and motivation, leading to disengaged employees, poor work quality, and the loss of your best people. The impacts to your organization include high costs, low productivity, and wasted resources. At Harmonious Workplaces, our purpose is to help you build the best workplace possible. We are advisors applying proven organizational development and industrial organizational psychology methodologies to help you become your best organization. We are doers, using time-tested principles to help you execute organizational change initiatives smoothly and successfully. To discover how harmonious workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.
And we're back. So, we're talking about gamification, and we were just talking about, like, on the personal side of things, but,
Right.
yeah, how can we put this into the business context?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Rich, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say in our first segment, we were talking about charismatic leaders and whether that's a way to help motivate people within the context of a game in terms of getting access to that person. So, is part of the motivation, part of the gamification? Let's say you're trying to get your team or your division to learn some new processes or become compliant on
Mhm.
some training that's become mandated because of the industry you're in, or your annual
Sure.
training on corporate ethics, whatever that looks like. Is
Sure.
there a way to leverage the celebrity status if you have a leader at that company who is just well loved? And maybe you get lunch with that person if you complete your training the fastest, or maybe the team that completes its training the fastest gets lunch with that person. And so at
Mhm.
some point, does that work? Is that something that obviously that would be hard to translate to all companies if that company doesn't have a leader who everyone recognizes as lunchworthy, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Right.
Um,
Right. Well, I think about two things here.
yeah.
One is, so Salesforce, familiar with Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
So Salesforce is a CRM,
Yeah.
customer relationship management. It's our acronym for the day. Uh, so it's a software that is used to um, track leads and opportunities for sales, but also customer service. And they do a whole bunch of other things that drive businesses, right? Um, they have a training system called the Trailhead, right? So it's built like it's a learning management system, LMS. There we go again. And the
Dam
idea
has been
behind
broken. It's all coming
yes,
fast and furious
it
now.
all now we've got acronym city going on here, right? it's they're gonna keep coming at you. Um, but they have these it's kind of like an explorer culture is what they are going for, right? So it's all kind of outdoorsy um phrases and terms and they have little helpful characters that are there, cute little characters to take the edge off of the intimidating system that nobody wants to move into. And but it's they have this point system. And so as you take their courses in the trailhead, you get points. And when you get so many points, you get a badge. And it is motivating to go and say, "Hey, look, I've achieved this badge, or I've achieved," and I could share this
Yeah,
badge
you can
on
share it out on your social platforms or in your
social.
internal systems, whatever.
Right, right. And so then you end up getting, when you share on social media, you get people validating that by saying congratulations and all that, and that sharing section helps to keep
Mhm.
people on track and motivated, right? Um, And I've seen it with other systems,
Right.
some certain project management systems like,
Yeah.
we use
We
Asana,
use Asana, sure, and
right?
that has a
When you what I was just gonna say, when you check off a box and you not only get the dopamine hit of,
of completing a
I did
task.
this,
Yeah.
right, but you also get some, sometimes you get an animated character go across the
Right,
screen,
with
like that
sparkles and
unicorn.
rainbows and stuff, yeah.
Yes, exactly, right? And it's that kind of, fun and achievement,
Mhm,
that keeps you motivated and like, "Oh, I like that. Okay,
mhm,
let's try to replicate that again."
yeah, but it can also be, useful in a work context in terms of if you're on a training course, either an internal course or you've subscribed to something and you're completing a module and you're getting a badge, and then you're completing another module and you're getting a badge. Eventually, you get your certification. It's
Sure.
it's a way that you can then say, "Hey, I'm certified in whatever it is, project management, agile software development, change management, all of these different things." And now you can take advantage of that and say, okay, I now have upskilled myself and now I can move into another role or I can be given more responsibilities or that kind of thing. And so it's a really good way to sort of mark your progress, but then also get yourself into a different role that you might want to be growing into as part of your career development and whatnot. And
It's
you
true.
see it, your manager sees it, everyone else in the company sees it, and so it's a really good way to just be very open and transparent and public about now you've gained these competencies and you are recognized as X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, right. And kind of going to what you were talking about with the leader,
Yeah.
as being somebody to
Hmm.
influence this adoption of whatever change it is, right? I found in the digital transformations that I've done, which are primarily having to do with CRM systems or enterprise resource planning systems, ERP systems, right? Where um, if you can find a champion, right? It's like a person that has what we call referent power, right? So they may be a functional expert, but they're well liked and
Hmm.
well received. They people respect this person and they refer to this person all the time, right? So they have referent power. When you can get them to lead the way, right? This kind of goes to the leadership challenge. If anybody's ever read that book, right? There's 5 elements of the leadership challenge. One of
Okay.
those is to model the way,
Mm.
right?
Sure.
Having a leader that is actually leading by example, getting in there, doing it. Um, you you tend to get people to follow that person
Hmm.
and model what they're doing, which I think is one of the reasons why things like the DDP yoga thing work, right? Because people want to emulate this hero, and frankly, he'll reach out to you on Twitter and stuff like that, and go way to go or whatever. It may be him, it may not be, but
Hmm.
still,
Hmm.
you know, um, there's this idea that you have a cheering section and a leader that is supporting you, right? And we've talked about that before. Like I think the Gallup um, State of the Workplace survey that comes out every year said that up to 70% of employee satisfaction is based on the manager, the relationship with the manager, right? So
Right.
having one that,
Staggering, isn't it?
right, it's amazing,
Yeah.
so uh, finding
If
those
you do
people that are
one
willing to
thing,
do,
get that relationship right.
for sure. Yeah. You'll attract more people. You'll get, you'll keep them, which is some of the things that we hear about all the time is I can't keep my people, right? I can't keep the good people. They're going somewhere else.
Right.
Well, we need to look into why
Why
is
is
that?
that?
Sometimes
Right.
that's really hard.
Sometimes it's really hard, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. So I don't mean to make light of it, but I think that is if you can get that part of it right, you're way down the road,
Yeah,
so much further ahead than others.
for sure. Could we, bef- we take a break?
Yeah.
I'm going to come back. One of the things that you brought up that when we were talking about this episode is when is it appropriate or when is it not appropriate to
Hmm.
use gamification?
Hmm. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay. We'll be right back. At Harmonious Workplaces, we believe work should provide purpose, satisfaction, and growth. We empower people to thrive by fostering environments where individuals can find meaning in their work and organizations can succeed through thoughtful, well-executed strategies. We're committed to making work better for the people who do it and the leaders who guide them. To discover how harmonious workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com. And we're back. So in this episode, we've been talking about gamification in change,
Hmm.
and we've brought up some different examples and stuff like that.
Right. We've talked about how leaders are so crucial to drive change and to
Mhm.
consider ways that you can take advantage of leaders that are well liked, well respected, and that doesn't necessarily have to be through organizational or structural power. It can be referent power, like you were just saying, Reg,
Right.
before our break. Some of the things we've talked about include ways that you can build in badges so that as you gain competencies, that becomes very public and if people buy into that system, it can be a really good way to expand out your trustworthiness throughout an organization. Just to
Sure.
round it out, before we go to where I think you want to go, some of the things we talked about in a prior episode in terms of making change fun around
Mm.
gamification have to do with using little elements of joy and levity, if you will, to make
Sure.
gamification a little bit less cheesy, but having some of that shared competition to drive engagement, in terms of maybe instead of self-motivated getting a badge for yourself, maybe it's something where your team wins a team of the week award. In our prior episode, we reference a little, like team tchotchke or a stuffed animal or some sort of team trophy that you could share around. And, whoever does the best work for that week, they get that trophy and that kind of thing. And so as long as it's done in a way that's healthy, that's fun, that's inspirational and motivational, it
Sure.
keeps people working together and collaborating and, channeling my inner Cheryl Volpe in a way that's psychologically safe. I
Yeah.
think that that's
Right.
really, really powerful types of,
Yeah.
of tools that you can have. But
And then, and so, I mean, kind of going along with that, right?
yeah,
Here in the West, we are an individualistic society, right? In
right,
other words, we are very, um, self-motivated for ourselves as the individual, right? And
right.
so we have that competition of us versus everybody else, even the people on our team, right? Whereas,
It's a very much what's in it for me type of
right,
society, and it's not always in
right.
a bad way, but
Oh,
I think you're right, as opposed to maybe in other cultures, other parts of the world where it's in a mm, I'm not sure it's a
collectivist,
what's in it for us type of mentality, but it's a
right?
we are I am serving the collective, or I'm
Yeah,
serving something
exactly.
bigger than just myself.
Yeah, those collectivist societies,
Yeah.
typically in the, in the eastern part of the world, we see that it is a team effort
Mhm.
that, all
Team comes first.
all members,
Yeah.
yeah, team comes first,
Society
right?
comes
And
first, right.
yeah, and in the last decade or so, I've seen shifts of that towards, at least being a theory, right? That we're trying to do that more here in the States, but,
I
I
wonder
think there's a
if it's
blend of that.
I think some of it's been in the United States and other Western cultures for a long time, but it's been very, very sort of siloed, if you will. There's always
Right.
been that mentality in sports. If you have a good coach, you have a coach who or other people on the team who make sure that it's all about the team, and you have team captains who, if they're good team captains, are driving that mentality. You might
Sure.
not play in a game for 2 weeks, but then you're called on and you're expected to give your all. You're expected to train as hard as everyone else, and it's all about that. It's taken a long time though for that mentality, that approach to bridge into the corporate world, at least in my experience. It's
Yeah.
it's not something that's, as ubiquitous as in the sports world.
Right. Yeah. Great analogy there. Um, so when is it so yeah, when is it appropriate to use gamification and change, and when is it not?
Yeah. Well, I think we were teeing it up. You teed it up earlier in the episode. I think there are changes when you're trying to move your team towards a specific goal where it's not going to be as personally felt if, for example, you're gonna get fired because of a change in the corporate environment, or your job is at risk because of a merger or an acquisition type of thing,
Right.
or if there's unhealthy competition that a manager is driving his or her staff to compete in a way that's not healthy. And
Right.
I think you referenced Squid Games at one point, in pairing people against each other in a way that says the one who makes the most sales, or the one who learns fastest, or the one who has the highest customer satisfaction rankings, that person gets the award, or that person stays and the other person is demoted or fired, or not given plum assignments, things like that. That can be very
Right.
unhealthy. So there are
Sure.
some sort of like those, organizational changes where it's a reduction in force or people are getting fired, unhealthy management styles. Those are places where I might avoid any kind of gamification.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
How about you? Where are you seeing
What
it?
yeah, so like, our society is filled with, in the media, we have all these game shows of eliminations, right? And so you'll pit team against team, and then
Mhm.
you'll pit, individuals against individuals, and then, it always comes down to a bracket at the end, and
Yeah,
there's, one champion.
right. Well,
Um,
and that comes from sports tournaments as well. I mean, we're here in
sure,
the US, we're just about to dive into the thick of March Madness, and that is the bracket of all brackets,
the
right?
bracket, yes, right, absolutely, absolutely,
It's another thing people can go YouTube if they don't understand March Madness.
that's right.
DDP, March Madness, you've got homework. We'll assign
Small
badges.
story. I never bet. I never gamble. I got into an office pool once
Yeah.
on a March Madness office. I have no idea who ever plays a March Madness. I have no clue. And I won.
How did you pick your teams?
I I picked so I won the worst bracket in the whole office. I won $50. How did I pick my teams? I picked 2 teams I had never heard of ever. I didn't even know that they existed. I said, "I'm gonna go." I I like these names. I'm gonna
Okay.
go with those. I don't remember what they were, but,
Okay.
I stuck with that.
So we have a little healthy family competition and it's just for bragging rights. And so
Sure.
one year our daughter picked teams based on the color of the uniforms. And I think she won that
There you
year.
go. Okay.
One year she picked
Alright.
based on whether it was the team was east of the Mississippi or west of the Mississippi. And I think she came in second that year.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a lot to be said for a little bit of just random luck in these
Yeah,
things.
sure, sure. But when we are in a workplace and it affects somebody's paycheck,
Yeah,
wait,
or
their
career
career.
or, their sense of self, for example,
Yeah,
even if it doesn't affect your paycheck, if you're competing, if we're competing for who gets the most likes when people listen to our podcast and it's like the Rich versus Ben, and, I see you ticking up and up and up. In some ways, I'm gonna be really happy for you. If I have that right mindset, I'm gonna say, "Wow, Rich, you're killing it. You're awesome. I wanna be more like
sure.
you." And I wanna figure out how I can drive likes up. And in other ways, I'm thinking, "Oh, man, that stinks. Nobody likes me. Why would I even try?" And over time, I'm just gonna sort of fade into the background of our podcast.
Or you could go the other way and you could sabotage me and poor Ben going off into the distance.
Off into the purple sunset. Yeah,
Well,
but it can be super
so
demotivating, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
see your point.
yeah. I've had experiences where, like you'll get 2 people that are on a team for a project, right? And so, um, they're told, one of you's gonna be here and one of you isn't at the end of this project, and it's
Oh, so
pitting
right
them
from
up
the get-go, it's set up.
right at the get,
Oh,
and
that's evil. Well,
it's
it's
really tough
honest,
to keep
but it's
them.
evil.
It's honest, but it's evil, and it's really tough them to keep the team motivated and cohesive
Yeah,
when at the end there's gotta be a rift,
there's
right?
gonna be
Because
one left standing and the other one
one left
left
standing. Yes.
high and dry.
Yes. Yeah.
That
So
that's
Thunderdome
like
does not work in
that would be the
in a work.
Machiavellian leg of the dark triad stool.
That could probably be. We'll have to ask Cheryl about that, but that makes sense to me. Right? Well, I mean, and we see this. I mean, there are some instances where, the game is no longer fun and it is pure just competition,
Mhm.
right? So there's, kind of a difference there, right? You got competition and you've got gamification, right? And we're
Yeah. When it's
yeah,
unhealthy like that, that's not gonna yield to in the long term, that's not gonna yield good, healthy people and good positive outcomes for your I mean, think about that person that's left standing, how they're gonna be super motivated at first because 'cause they're like, "Yeah, I'm here, I stayed," but
right,
let's say
right,
they had a good working relationship with the person who didn't make it, they're
right,
gonna feel badly for that person, and
sure.
what happens next time there's one of those forced competitions and that
Well,
person
yeah,
doesn't make it, how are they gonna feel? How
right.
how motivated are they gonna be to do their best if this is like every what is it, month, quarter, year, they're forced into this new Thunderdome situation. It's like
Sure.
that's super strict. Nobody wants to work in that environment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we
It's
had
tiring.
Alex Prassas on, right? And talking about trust, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a significant amount of trust you lose when you have, this win-lose situation, that could happen. Which so ultimately that company may be in a lose-lose situation because you may just be forcing attrition to that person
Yeah,
that,
and
oh,
all the good people are gonna see through that pretty quickly, and they're gonna wind up
sure.
leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I Go ahead.
well, I know we're coming up to time here, but, there's some research that points to, like, just going back to, like, the positive aspect of games within your change. Um, but there is kind of this, fatigue that can happen with games where, there's a point where they lose their impact, you know?
Well, with anything, I
So
mean, change fatigue is a real thing, and maybe we
sure.
go revisit that in one of our future episodes. I think we've
Yeah,
talked
that'd be
about it a
awesome.
little bit, but
Right.
for sure, and that can happen with game game fatigue. I don't know if that's a industry term as well, but yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Although, if you can make your organization game as a team as Candy Crush
Or DDP yoga.
or yes, or Wordscapes, think I'm on level 1,000 of Wordscapes.
I don't want to tell you how addicted to Tetris I was
There you
back in the
go,
day.
right on. Yes.
But that's a good point, actually. If we're talking about gamification, there are a lot of people who like some of those word games or sort of, the different kinds of games that you're talking about. And that works for some people, but not all people. So, in
Mhm.
terms of setting up an environment of healthy competition, it has to also, you have to make it resonate to some degree with the majority of the folks who you're trying to influence and who you're trying to make your change be a little
Yeah,
bit more fun and engaging and motivating. And in the
sure.
same way that all change, you're never going to get everybody. There's always going to be that change curve, which, you've elucidated so well in our prior episodes. You're never going to get everybody, but you do have to think about what change is right for your organization in terms of what gamification approach is going to be right for your organization.
Sure, sure. Another thing to kinda add to that, like we've talked about, even when we were talking about assessments with Katie recently, right, is to get to know the individual, right?
Mhm.
And so not everybody is going to be wanting to participate as you kind of were just talking about there,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah. Well, Cheryl
um
has always said, "Know your audience, meet them where they
right,
are." I mean, that's
right.
critical.
Yeah. Forcing people into a situation where they're in a competing environment, when this is not how they're wired, right? Could
Mhm,
have some negative impact,
mhm.
so
Yeah. So
yeah.
you have to understand there's always a element of how do you tailor things for your organization and your team and your people
Yeah,
that you have to keep in mind.
for sure. So Ben, as we kind of wrap this up today, what are some last thoughts you've got? Oh, it stumped you.
It's just like my head is just going in so many different directions.
Sure.
It's just it's a cornucopia of ideas and good ways and bad ways to do gamification. And
Right.
I think some of it is just what we were talking about. You have to understand your organization and your people, understand what kind of motivational tactics will be appropriate for your team.
Mhm.
What kind of gamification will work with your team in
Right.
terms of what will engender that healthy competition and keep people motivated. And for some teams, that's the corporate bobblehead that you pass around each week. For other teams, it's little badges as you complete certain
Yeah.
certifications. All of those things can work. It just depends on your organization. And then I think the other thing that key takeaway is that gamification is not appropriate for all situations in all organizations. That you have to be kind of careful about how you set it up, and you have to understand that there are maybe ways that gamification can disincentivize people if it's done really poorly, and
Right.
maybe even intentionally set up in a way that weeds people out, like you were talking about. That can
Sure.
tend to backfire, I think, in terms of
Yeah.
overall culture and health,
Yeah.
things like that. The other thing that really resonates with me is the use of affordances. I think that's just a fantastic word.
That name or that word, right?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's going to enter into our vocabulary
There you
now.
go. What about you?
And all of our
What are
listeners.
some key takeaways for you?
Yeah, I think knowing, just being observant enough to and using evaluation, to know first of all your people and their tolerances and all that stuff, right? But also to just watch when is appropriate to use
Mhm.
gamification and when you should pull back on it, or also alternatively, like what forms of games will help to keep people engaged, right? So
Right.
be willing to experiment, and there's a lot of literature out there on things that have worked. So I like working with frameworks, so
Yeah,
go
you're
and
our
find that.
framework and methodology captain.
Well, I don't know about a captain, but I like me a good framework. So uh well,
Nice.
that's a wrap for
There you
today.
have it.
Yeah. Yeah. So um
Go visit our website. For those of us
please.
on the other side of it, we love your feedback. We love hearing from you. Visit our
Yeah.
website, share this out if you like this episode, share it with other people. If you didn't like this episode, share it with other people and tell them why you didn't like it.
And
Tell
we'll
us why you
have
didn't like it.
for sure. Yeah, give us some ideas of how are you using
Yeah,
gamification in your organization.
yeah,
Um, we will have Cheryl Volpe back
yeah,
in our next podcast, and we miss you, Cheryl. We'll see you soon.
yeah,
Uh, and yeah, if you haven't yet picked up Hermie, the HR Hermit Crab, go to our website, find them on Amazon.
yeah.
But our cartoon book, Hermie, the HR Hermit Crab,
Which has
is
some
available.
examples of unhealthy gamification.
That's absolutely right. There is a whole panel that Cheryl wrote specifically on with the game in it. So yeah. So
Very good,
all right.
very good.
Well, folks, until we meet again, make change your friend.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.